Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
So, this episode we're going to be talking about the 2017 film The Foreigner, starring Jackie Chan. This is currently on Netflix UK, for those with Netflix, if you want to watch it for free.
Yes, and it was produced by Jackie Chan, and it's a British-Chinese co-production made for Netflix, written by a guy called David Marconi, who wrote Die Hard 4 and Enemy of the State.
Okay.
But it's an adaptation of a novel called The Chinaman.
Yes.
I think it was wise to change the name. It's directed by Martin Campbell, who I think we've just about forgiven him for Green Lantern, but he did, he's got a good pedigree, GoldenEye.
Casino Royale.
Which was
exactly. The one that everyone was like, he's...
Well, and GoldenEye, so in a way he's re-kick-started Bond twice.
Yes, he really has, yeah.
Yeah.
Plus he did...
Sorry?
Yeah, that's it. I was say, sorry, yeah, he's done quite a few different pieces over the year. Different Edge of Darkness as well. It's like a horror. Oh no, it's a Mel Gibson one. That's not Payback, but it's sort of ish, that kind of a thing. Hard Man thing. So that's supposed to be quite good as well. So yeah, he's done he's done a few different things over the years.
Yes.
Episode of Bergerac. Look at that. Anyone outside the UK will know, over a certain age will not have any idea. Anyway, so let's talk about The Foreigner. So it's a Jackie Chan film, but it's not what I would consider a typical Jackie Chan film at all, really.
No, it's a lot grittier. It feels in a way like a 70s or 80s British film, the kind of films we probably watched when we were growing up when we shouldn't have watched them.
Yeah.
It has that kind of feel to it, really. And you get to see Pierce Brosnan essentially playing Jerry Adams in all but name.
Yes, because
is that a fair comment?
I think so. This film, despite having Jackie Chan as the lead and, as you said, the co-production thing, it's not an action feature in what you would expect with Jackie Chan in the lead. You would think it'd be a lot of kung fu, a lot of wire work, and a lot of kind of stuff that's really over the top. And it's almost like it's a film about the problems in Northern Ireland between Sinn Féin and the IRA and other groups, and Jackie Chan happens to just feature in this political drama.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair, actually. He's in it. He's the main character, but
yes.
he's working around the edges of the main story in a way.
Yeah, it's odd, and that they're trying to do some of the characters will get onto it trying to do something, and he's kind of causing a spanner in the works, and they're trying to solve something, and he's causing more problems as it happens. Up to a certain point, anyway. But yeah, so it's an odd film in some ways, I think.
It is. One thing I particularly liked, and I noticed this straight from the very start, is it's nice to see London presented as London in a way, because. Maybe it's because, about a week before I watched this, I watched The Hitman's Bodyguard.
Oh, dear.
Which is... have you seen it?
No, but the trailer put me off enough.
I didn't mind it, I have to say. Maybe it caught me in a good mood. But, Ryan Reynolds and Samuel L. Jackson, very different from this film.
Yeah.
But London is in that, but it's so stylized that it's kind of like a London that doesn't really exist. It's a London that works for an international audience because it's what you imagine London is like.
Yeah.
Whereas... on this, you just go, which is why I think it reminded me of 70s and 80s films, because you're like, okay, I kind of know more or less where that road is, or I recognise that kind of place. It just felt, pretty real. And I think as well, because so much of it is about the Troubles, watching it last week when it was the 20th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, made it a weird watch, because so much has been on the news about things again. But this is, again, you don't really get kind of proper kind of political thrillers anymore, or if you do, maybe they miss my radar. But this, it's why to me it felt like a classic kind of either action thriller or just thriller with some action elements in it, which I think made it a little bit kind of timeless, really.
Yeah, and I like the fact that Jackie Chan's also playing someone his own age.
Yes.
which is something they refer to a few times, which made me laugh. Where he basically kicks the crap out of these 4 young guys, and they go, "How is it that a 60-something Chinaman just beat up the 4 of you?" He's a shopkeeper. What is it? Owns a restaurant, and he just takes them down. They're going, "Hang on, how? How is that possible?"
I quite like seeing him in these kind of older, quieter roles as well that are a bit less showy. I know most people don't like the Karate Kid reboot, but I do a lot. Although it should have been called the Kung Fu Kid, but he's amazing in that, and it's quite similar to this role in a way where he does that kind of quiet intensity. I think he's a much better actor than he's probably been given credit for over the years as well. Because he has some fights in this, but it's not the main. It's not his main role in the story. It's more kind of window dressing in a way.
Yes, and to begin with, his kung fu skills and survival skills seem out of place and really kind of just bonkers. And you're supposed to think, to begin with, I was thinking, okay, he's just playing someone who happens to know all of this stuff incidentally. Right, I get it. But as the film goes on, you find out more about him and you go, okay, they've actually thought this through and planned it, and they haven't just sort of done it on a wing and a prayer and said, well, it's Jackie Chan. Let's give him loads of kung fu skills because it's Jackie Chan. Yeah! It makes more sense. So, as you say, it's more like it's kind of political thriller and less an action film, which was surprising to me. I was expecting a lot more kind of kung fu and flipping bodies and throwing objects and, wire work.
Yeah, the same with me, really. And I think there's positives and negatives about that for me. I think it made it a more interesting film probably overall, but I'd probably like to see a little bit more Jackie Chan, get a little bit more screen time. But, I mean, what did you think of I thought the opening of the film was exceptional, the way that it started. What did you think?
Is that... So, I'm trying to remember. It feels like it's been ages since I watched it. So the beginning, is that where he takes his daughter to the...
To get is it a prom dress? I think it's...
Yes, so she's at university, I think.
Yeah.
And he's driving around London, he's trying to park the car. She runs into the shop to get this dress because they're having a mad rush on them or something. And it's so annoying. He's waiting for a space. The guy pulls out. He looks behind him, and a guy nips around, dicks in front, and tries to reverse into the space at the same time as he's driving into it, and they have a fender bender.
Do you know what? I'd have been happy if the whole film was just him getting his own back on that guy for nicking the space. To me, that's a perfectly acceptable film. Like Falling Down, but about bad road manners. I'd be well into that.
I think so. Yeah. But I think I'm glad that guy was injured. I don't think he died, sadly.
No.
What happened shortly after? But no, I think it's perfectly justifiable for stealing a space like that. But unfortunately, he was only injured. But still. Yes. So the film starts out very normal and very kind of family friendly and very slow and just sort of gentle, and he's a loving father and his daughter's very happy and all the rest of it. And then a bomb goes off in the shop or next to the shop. I'm not sure.
I think it's next to the shop, yeah.
Yeah, and it blows up and kills his daughter, a whole bunch of other people in the shop.
Yeah, it's next to it because they're bombing banks, aren't they? And it's next to a bank. But I mean, even though I kind of knew the premise and I knew something happened to his daughter, and I knew kind of that it probably was going to be a bomb because of how it was set up and stuff. That still kind of took me by surprise because it was just so soon in the film. It did a couple of minutes of kind of character establishing. You think maybe 15, 20 minutes in something bad's going to happen, but it was almost like before the title sequence ran. It was
very quick. Yeah.
But I think that made it more powerful because the kind of rug is pulled out from under him as a character, but also for you as an audience at the same time.
Yeah, and then there's the kind of realistic assessment of, right, now what do the police do? They're looking into it. They're trying to work out who's responsible. And I say realistic in that you don't suddenly get one rogue cop going, right, I'm going to go out and punch some criminals, and then I'm going to be a loose cannon, and I'm going to fight. It's like, no, okay, all right, there's a procedure. We do this. We reach out to people. We talk to things. We try and do this. And very quickly they establish it has some sort of connection to the Irish, and then I think the new IRA, this group calling themselves the Authentic IRA, I can't remember.
Authentic IRA, that's right.
And it's a brand new splinter group that no one's ever heard of, claiming responsibility for it, but they were targeting the bank next door to the dress shop.
That's right. And I think straight away as well, he kind of, his performance is so quiet. He wears the sadness in every kind of inch of his face.
Yeah.
He's just, and then you find out across the course of the film that he's already lost the rest of his family before.
Yeah.
I think when he was escaping from China, and so literally she was the only blood relative he had left, and they kind of set up this new life where everything was kind of safe and his past was all kind of forgotten, and then just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I kind of. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but there's part of me that thought this was going to be like Taken or like The Equalizer, but yes. I think it's a lot more measured than that and a lot more grounded, which again I think is kind of, there's positives and negatives to that. I liked it, but I think it just wasn't what I was expecting really.
Yeah,
but,
I agree. I was expecting more of an action-orientated film, as you say.
And there were times when it felt like a TV miniseries, but I think a lot of that was because of the pace, but also because there were so many people from like Luther or Happy Valley or even EastEnders that pop up in the cast that you kind of, and because it's set in the UK and it's not a Hollywoodized version, it did almost feel like a kind of three-parter, again, that you'd probably have watched in the 80s over kind of 3 nights. But then, I think this is around here that we first see Pierce Brosnan, isn't it, as Liam Hennessy?
Yes, he's the deputy... what is deputy something for? I don't remember what he is now. His role. He's a senior politician in the Irish government, essentially. And obviously the British government contact him and saying, right, who's this new group? We're trying to maintain the peace. Why is this new splinter group the Authentic IRA? What's going on? What's happening? And he is basically playing Gerry Adams.
Yeah,
he looks like him, the white hair, the glasses. But of course, he is... I forget all the time that Pierce Brosnan is Irish.
I know, me too, because I was thinking at times, like, I'm not sure if his Irish accent's that good. And I think, his accent's really good. And I think, hang on a minute, he's actually Irish. So it's
exactly.
I guess he's probably spent so much time in the States that it's almost... I'm the same with like Michael Fassbender when you see him interviewed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh yeah, of course he's Irish. There's so many. I mean, think there's, so many British actors now that are playing Americans in virtually everything, that you almost forget where they're from.
I know. But yes, so his accent's very good. It's very convincing.
It is, I know.
Not for a moment I think that sounds weird.
I think I congratulate Scott, who I assume was his vocal coach. Sorry, that is the most inside baseball comment probably ever on the podcast, but never mind.
That's fine. So yes, he's playing this director and he's trying to work out who's responsible, what's going on. He calls in all of the leaders of all of the groups and sort of says, I've been trying... I remember the bad old days. I was part of them. Excuse me. We're not going back to that. We're not. And he seems really earnest. He seems really determined. And he's saying, look, I'm not doing this. I don't care who it is. And then he loses it because he's talking to them and they're all a bit sort of, well, the youngsters these days and blah, blah. And he properly kicks off and they start swearing. Yeah. And he hadn't done it before. So it made the moment more powerful because he sort of goes, I don't give a fucking what's going on. I'm going to find you these fuckers on. I was like, ooh.
Yeah, you see the underbelly of kind of the man he was before, which I think was needed. If not, I think you almost go, well, it's too good to be true that he's kind of become this kind of statesman. Yeah. I think he needed that kind of, he's a statesman, but underneath, there's still this. And I think at this point he starts kind of using this to his advantage a bit because he's if he can find out who did it, he's going to get some people pardoned. Which again, like you said before, kind of there's an element of politicking in this film that it isn't just find the bad guys. It's not that kind of movie. It's
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually everything that anyone does has repercussions. So what is almost which I quite like about the film, and that's why Jackie Chan's character completely destroys that. But the idea really is, what is the quietest way of sorting this out?
Yes.
That doesn't cause any kind of diplomatic incident. But
and then you've got this Chinaman who's basically gone to the police and said, I want to know who killed my daughter, give me the names. And the police chief's like, well, we're looking into it. I haven't got any names. I can't really give you the names. That's not how it works. And the British government's trying to make this deal with Hennessy in return for the names that they can then give to the police to sort out. And he's just this constantly turning up saying, give me a name, give me a name. And then it's really random. He sees Hennessy on the news talking about his past and how proud he is. And he starts... It's really good because he goes on the internet, he reads a bunch of articles, he gets some news clippings, he actually does his homework, and then he phones Hennessy and he doesn't believe him because he says, give me the names. He goes, I don't know who they are. And he just doesn't believe him.
I love the fact he's just constantly asking the same question over and over again, and he keeps upping the ante throughout the film. But then he just keeps saying, "Just give me." It's almost like, well, if you give me the names in the first place, you could avoid all this. And I like that kind of. I think there are lots of opportunities in this film for it to suddenly get a bit ridiculous, but it doesn't. It's like, well, I want this thing to do this thing, and if you give me that, that's fine. It's very his. Khan's approach is very kind of direct and very linear. And again, unlike some of the films I mentioned before, which, although they're very good, do have this kind of tendency to kind of like in the final third suddenly become something bigger than the thing that person is actually trying to get revenge for or sort out. What I quite like about this, it's although it does have like worldwide implications of terrorism, etc., it's basically, I just want to know who killed my daughter, and that's it. That's his what he wants is very, very clear.
The irony is of comparing it to Taken in that obviously in that his daughter is abducted, and in this is Jackie Chan's character, his daughter is killed. The parallels come in that they've got this relentlessness, both characters that are going after them, and the other thing is Taken's much more over the top to the point where he says, I have very special skills, and I'll use them and blah blah blah. And of course, Jackie Chan's character does have a very special set.
But he doesn't. He's quite happy for everyone to think that he's just a restaurant owner.
Yeah, and for the large part, they think he is. They just think he's this guy who just wants to know who killed his daughter. They don't know anything about him until he does some things that are a bit unusual, and they go, "Okay, hang on, who is this guy?"
When they start taking him seriously, when they eventually start taking him seriously, then they actually look into who he is, because up to then they just think it's this annoying guy.
Because he won't take no for an answer. He phones Hennessy, gives him a cold shoulder. So he gets on a boat and goes over to Ireland and turns up in Hennessy's office to talk to him. But it's really amusing because he goes in and he's just got like his shopping in a bag. And they search him and they go, it's his groceries. And for God's sake, just let him in with his groceries. And then he confronts Hennessy again and says, what if it was your wife and daughter? What would you do?
There's a great bit before that, which is quite a kind of quiet moment, and it'd be easy to miss. Before he goes, he sets fire to all the old photos and news stories about his family. Mm-hmm. So where you think his wife died in childbirth, and like I said before, kind of the rest of his family died. But it's almost like he's kind of purging himself of his family life so that he can be the guy who, at that point, we don't know his background, but it's almost to go back to being this. Well, I'll say it's a special forces, very special forces background, and it's almost like, well, okay, if I purge myself of all my family ties now that everyone's gone, I can be something else. It's really, I thought it was a really clever kind of understated thing, because it does not explain. He just sits there burning these. I guess equally as well as maybe it's to cover up who he is. But I thought that was really clever. He goes to Ireland with a fake van, with a van with fake signs, and that was the point I thought, okay, there's more to this guy than meets the eye, and then we start to see what he's capable of once he gets to Ireland.
Yeah, because Hennessy brushes him off again in person and just doesn't believe him. But before he leaves the building, he goes into the gents and he essentially builds something. And I thought, what is he doing? And it's really ordinary. It's just like bottles of lemonade hung on string in the gents' toilet. And I thought, what's that? Is it just to like scare them? And he's, with the cigarettes and the matches and all that kind of thing. It was actually a proper bomb that he'd fashioned from homemade things. And it was just so well done that when they looked in the bag, they just saw groceries.
Yeah, and I think, because at this stage, I was thinking, well, we all know as an audience that he's Jackie Chan. There's something that goes with that. But if you don't know that, he is just a little, unassuming man with kind of his shoulders down, carrying his shopping. Like you say, it's very kind of... it's almost like a Bruce Lee performance where he does that, internalizes everything. But yeah, I like the fact in a way that it's a bomb because it's kind of, he's playing them at their own game.
Yes.
Which I thought was quite clever, rather than straight away going in and kind of throwing his fists around.
Yeah, which he doesn't really do a lot of, not really.
No, he does a bit. There's a couple of fights, but they're only when needed, really. It's all very kind of... He does what's needed in the moment. But yeah, I'm trying to think where we are now.
Well, we don't need to go through it all so much. No. But Hennessy starts to realise that something's wrong and something's up with this guy, and he's not just someone who's after revenge for his daughter. He wants names, he wants revenge. And whilst he's getting pressure from the British government, he's finding out that there are traitors in his own midst, people who are saying one thing to him, but are actually giving access to the young group of guys who are making the bombs in London. They've done one. He sets up a trap to try and catch them, Hennessy, saying that I've changed the code word, and when one of them does the next one, I've given a different code to every captain, so that I'll know who the traitor is. So it's really interesting that he seems determined to find out who the bomber is. Everything's working to plan, except for Jackie Chan, who's causing problems. And it all seems to be going great. The police are happy. He sent his nephew privately to go and meet with the chief of police to say, look, we can't be seen to be talking to you because it would cause problems with the old guard and the new guard, but we're doing it this way so that you can see I'm serious. And I believed him. I absolutely believed.
Me too.
Pierce Brosnan's character Hennessy is utterly earnest in his determination to keep the peace, to find out who the bombers are, and that's it.
And I think you almost feel sorry for him because at this stage, when you think that he is a reformed man and he's trying to find out
despite being an adulterer.
That is also true. And that becomes a larger part of the story than I'd anticipated.
Yeah.
Cleverly done as well. But so what I really like this bit here, Jackie Chan Kwan is basically just constantly ringing him and asking him for the names. He's just still picking away at him. But there's a really clever thing he does with his car. So he wires up Hennessy's car, and so someone else is about to get in, I think his driver, and the other guy's like, no, and they run over, and it's like it was wired, but it wasn't completely. It was almost like I could have blown your car up if I wanted to, but I haven't. And actually, where the kind of fuse is, it's just a piece of paper saying, "Tell me the names."
Yeah.
Which I thought was really powerful. It's almost like you are underestimating me, but I'm not going anywhere. Which I thought was really clever. And then their first proper fight scene is when they start taking him more seriously, they find Kwan in the B&B that he's staying at.
Because this is quite funny, where up to now they've said, well, he's a 60-year-old Chinaman in Ireland. You can probably find him fairly easily. Look at all the B&Bs in the last couple of days, and it true wouldn't be that hard, and they do find him pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yes, and 4 or 5 guys go in to try and take him out, and this is where Jackie starts showing off his skills. Yeah,
and it's typical kind of vintage Jackie Chan almost of using anything that is to hand.
Yes,
which I think is great. But I say, this in his old films, this would have been like a 40-minute sequence with one long camera move, followed him, then as he kind of grabbed onto the washing line and scaled down the side of a mountain. But it was a little bit, but it's still, the skills are obviously all still there. And again, in this gritty situation, it's not overdone. It's kind of a mixture of kind of special forces, kind of close combat and martial arts, which I thought was really cleverly done.
But he gets away. He managed to beat these 5 guys and get away. And that's where Pierce Brosnan's character kicks off and goes, how is it that 60-something Chinaman just beat the lot of you?
Yeah.
And that's when he begins to realise there's something up. No, it's later, isn't it? When he goes to the farm.
It's not long after that, because this is the point. I think Kwan is still following him. So even though he's got away from the B&B, and then he discovers the affair, and sends a photo to Hennessy and basically says that he could reveal things if he wanted to. And then I think he goes to the farm, and he's setting up bombs. He's taking people down, but it suddenly becomes very much like First Blood. Because he starts setting traps in the woods. He starts lying on the ground, camouflaged. Again, which is a side of kind of Jackie Chan not seen before. So this whole kind of special forces things, it kind of shows that sometimes he's using a gun, sometimes he's using his fists, his feet, and other times he's using the woods.
Oh, some of the traps he sets up, though, they're nasty.
Yeah.
Really nasty. Because the guys realize he blows up the barn, so they realize he's out there. And he's just proven the point that he can get to them at any point. So Hennessy sends a number of guys out into the woods to go after him. And Jackie Chan takes them all out. And those he doesn't are injured. And they retreat. And then he says to his number two, "Get more men out here." And he goes, "Well, we could, but someone's going to notice." We need like 100 guys or something. I was thinking, come on, 100? We said, they're going to notice. We need a tracker. We need a specialist to take him out instead. And that's when he calls on his nephew again to do him a favour.
It's just after we find out his nephew is sleeping with his wife.
We find out, but I think he finds out.
But he doesn't. He finds out later.
Yeah. Which was interesting. It wasn't expected.
And we also, I think, around this point, find out a bit more about Liam and the fact that he was actually part of this plan. So we've been following him as this kind of statesman trying to turn his life around, and he's looking into who did it. He is looking into who did it, but not because he didn't want it to happen, but because he thinks they went too far. So he did want banking institutions hit. He was always going to use it as a way to get people pardoned. That was his plan. But what he wasn't planning to do was let civilians get killed. Yes. Which is the line he wouldn't cross anymore. So I guess if they hadn't crossed the line, then he wouldn't have Jackie Chan all over him.
True. Yes, this is it. But so this is a point where you suddenly realise Jackie Chan isn't just a problem for the main part of the story for a guy who's actually earnest despite being, cheating on his wife and stuff. You realise that no, he's still corrupt. He's still dangerous, and he's still partly responsible for the deaths of many innocent people. And he was in on it from the beginning, but they gave no clues until the reveal halfway through now. I wasn't expecting it, to be honest.
No, and I think it's the kind of middle of the film here, and it does, the pace kind of sags a little bit for me, but it's because there's so much going on. There's stuff going on with his wife and the nephew. There's the stuff going on with him and the younger woman, who there's more about that comes up later. No one basically is quite who you think they are. Mm-hmm. So I think his wife is frustrated. She kind of preferred him when he was actually a terrorist to him as a politician. She thinks he's got weak, isn't doing enough. The nephew's very close to him, but obviously he's even closer to the wife. And then the person that he's having an affair with isn't quite what she seems either. No. So there's an awful lot of plot that goes on, but I think what that does is kind of almost sidelines Jackie Chan for a little bit too long for me,
right?
Because you don't really see him on screen for quite a while in the middle part.
Yeah. As I say, he's almost, there's this film with Pierce Brosnan, blah blah blah, and Jackie Chan. It feels that kind of he's the last person on the credits because he's got a big name, but equally he's not the lead in the film. And yet his name and face is obviously on all of the posters and all of the PR.
That's right. And I think because this starts to become more about the people within the IRA, so that we haven't really talked about McGrath, but McGrath is a guy that's in Luther, plays the head of the police, I think, from the second series onwards. I can't remember his name.
I'll think of it in a minute, but go on.
But he's kind of Liam's right-hand man in a way, and is the kind of guy who's been the link between the old and the new world. Mm-hmm. But essentially he's was happy to let civilians die. He also thinks that Liam's gone soft. Also working with Liam's wife.
Schenk.
So
DCI Martin Schenk.
That's right. That's it.
Carry on.
And so it's kind of this. I think at this point is where, well, Liam has given his nephew 24 hours to kind of sort things out. At the same time, the police are getting closer to the bomber because they've seen a birthmark. Because that's the thing, is there's kind of three fronts, really. There's the police trying to sort out who did it, the IRA trying to sort out who did it, all that they really know, and Jackie Chan, all happening at once, really. So this, I think, is the point where he finds out about McGrath. But you also, this is the bit where you find out that the woman that he's having an affair with is actually part of she's kind of a honey trap almost, but she's part of the
terrorist
terrorist group.
Yeah.
And she sleeps with a journalist that she meets, I think, in an airport. And that...
Oh, no, she meets him in the bar. She goes up to him in the bar and starts chatting to him and says, what are you working on? And he's working on his laptop on something which becomes more important later on as well. But yeah, she meets him in a bar, but she's targeted him, we find out later, on purpose. It wasn't a random encounter at all. It was very orchestrated.
And they bombed a bus at this point, I think, over the Thames. So it's very much changed from let's bomb the banking institutions to let's just bomb London. So it is like reverting back to kind of the 70s and 80s kind of approach. But you do get the nephew goes in. While this is all happening, the nephew does go
into the woods.
And also at this point, if I remember rightly, Liam has given, because he's found out kind of what's going on and he's been double-crossed, he's given the names. I thought he was going to do it to Kwan, but he actually gives the names to Bromley, who's the police guy. So the police now know who they are at this stage. And Kwan versus the nephew in the woods, so young guy versus old guy. It's a pretty brutal fight.
It is, and they're both specially trained special forces. And you begin to realise that, something's going on. We already knew he was special forces, but now we get to see it when he goes up against a guy who's a lot younger than him, and he still wins. Yep. He still beats him, and hasn't he been shot already at one point?
I think so.
And to kind of cauterise the wound and things.
Mm. Yeah, because he screams out in pain in the woods, doesn't he? There's kind of like kind of primal thing before he gets this final fight. So he's living by kind of adrenaline and fueled by his revenge. But I quite like at the end of the fight, he just kind of sits him down and just kind of goes, can you just give me the names?
Yeah.
He just still asks him the same question. It isn't a personal thing. It's literally there's another person who's an obstacle in my way, and now I just need to ask him the same question.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's just that he never changes. He never starts shouting. He never goes over the top. He never freaks out. He just maintains this calm, and his character is completely consistent in that way, which makes it more realistic and less kind of Al Pacino shouting, suddenly flipping out for no reason.
And I think, we've rattled through this, but I think my favourite scene with Jackie, or certainly favourite fight scene, is the bit because he's closing in now because he's been given the names. I think Liam does he shoot the nephew? Does he kill the nephew?
No, he lets him go.
Lets him go.
He goes back to the house and says, "Yeah, I gave him the names, and he let me go, and that was it. Now I'm here."
Yeah, and then the nephew kills the wife, which I found.
Well, Hennessy reveals that he knows he was cheating. His wife was cheating on him, but also the fact that his wife was using his nephew and that she was involved with the bombing because the trap that they'd set for the bomb, when it went off in the bus, they're supposed to give a code word. They didn't, and it turned out the reason was the wife was in on it. She got the information from the nephew. Yeah. Inadvertently, he stupidly didn't realise. So Hennessy says, "Go back to New York. I never want to see you again. However, I want you to do a favour for me before you go." And then about 10 minutes later, you see him knock on the door of Hennessy's wife. She opens it, and he just shoots her in the head and walks off straight away. Boom.
A lot of female characters die in this film.
It's true. Yeah.
Percentage-wise.
Yep.
So at this stage, Kwan basically knows who it is and knows where they are. But he is arriving at the place where they are at exactly the same time as the police are closing in.
To do a raid.
Yeah.
On them.
So it makes it quite tense. So he does the kind of A-team trick, and disguise himself as the gas man. That bit is a little bit ridiculous because he goes in. They're like, we can't let him in. We can't let him in. Then the landlady, I think, is kind of going, well, just let him in for a few minutes, and they go, let him in, but they want to look through his bag. It's like, well, who? When there's someone, what tenant? When someone comes to mend the boiler, asks the gas man to empty his.
That was a little bit. I was like, that's a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, just ask for his corgi card and it'll be fine.
Yeah, ring up his boss.
That's all you need. That's all you need. But this fight again is classic Jackie Chan grabbing kind of what you want, and he's much more brutal here because up to now, I think there's been an element of him slightly holding back because he's just trying to get to who it was. But now he knows these are actually the people who are responsible. He steps it up quite a lot when he kind of pulls. Is it a gun he's got in his bag?
He's got a machine gun buried at the bottom of his tool bag, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it was going to have nothing in it.
Yeah,
they'd go, oh, all right then. He'd start getting on with the work, pretend to, then just turn around and start attacking them. That's what I thought was going to happen. But no, he pulls a gun out and they have a massive firefight, and then he goes hand to hand. But he does a classic thing where they're shooting at him, and they look around the corner and he's not there suddenly. And I thought, he's moved, but he's on the ceiling. That was not expect. I didn't expect that. I was like, there he is. He's on the ceiling. Brilliant. Of course he is. It's Jackie Chan. But yeah, so they got these 4 young guys and a woman with guns, and Jackie Chan takes them all out.
He does.
Really hard. Takes them all out hard. It's not comfortable.
It's not comfortable, but yeah. But the flip of this then is that it's too late because the bomb has already been set, which I think so they all get killed apart from the woman. He doesn't kill the woman, does he?
No, she's still alive.
Yeah, and I think she tells them, kind of laughs at the police and kind of says, well, it's too late. The bomb's already been planted. But the scene with her is quite uncomfortable then.
Yes.
Because they the police start to torture her pretty much. And again, because it's not in a Hollywood kind of, twirly moustache kind of, someone in the back room getting out the pliers kind of way, because it's being done by essentially the British police. It's a lot more uncomfortable. And again, it's because she's a female as well, but they torture her, get the information, and then kill her.
Yeah, they say no survivors, don't they? And then just boop, done.
Because again, that diplomacy thing, they just want to keep the whole thing kind of under wraps. There's an element of, even if we catch the people and it's sorted, if people know that it's linked to the politicians in Ireland in the story, then that's a very different thing from it being a rogue group of people that are dead and can't say anything. They put an APB on Kwan as well at this point, I believe.
Yes, because they work out it was him who was there who took out all of the terrorists in 5 minutes when they were just about to breach. And he slips away. It's brilliant. They go in finally about to go in, and then he's gone. They get in there, and there's just that girl, alive, and the rest are dead. So, but anyway, yes, they then work out that the bomb is in the reporter's laptop. The police managed to find out where he is, so he's at the airport. And it's interesting that the film's been all about Jackie Chan getting revenge for his daughter, and he thinks it's over and it's done. And for him, it is. But the main story of the fact that there's still a threat and a bomb is almost incidental to him. It's like he didn't even know that it was going on. He never asked. He never pressed them for that. If it was another kind of film, they would have been chasing down.
Yeah, or he'd have joined forces with them to go and I know your daughter died, but think about everyone else. But I like that in a way. It's like a film that's got a kind of macro and micro level going on at the same time. And his story is kind of coming to an end.
That's it. He's done.
Almost.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the threat is still there, which I think is kind of brave. I think to do the film that way. But the police get there and they find the bomb. They run like crazy through the airport.
I thought it was going to go off. I thought the policeman was going to charge with it, and it would blow up with him on top of it, or he'd be running down the gangway towards a plane, and it would just go up before he got to throw it. But he didn't. So no one actually died, but except for a gangway was exploded, but it could have killed a lot of people. And it was a normal policeman. That's the other thing. It's a policeman we've never seen. This character who does this amazingly heroic thing and saves the day. And but it's quite realistic in that the guy had his headphones on, and they run past him, and he hasn't heard, and he takes them off and kind of turns to a woman and goes, "What's going on?" And she tells him. He goes, "Oh, that's me. That's me." And the policeman runs back and goes, "Are you?" He's like, "Yeah." Right. Well, then he takes the laptop and runs. There's this quiet moment where he like double checks. He just kind of goes, "Are you so and so?" "Yeah." "Okay. Thanks. Bye."
Yeah, I know, it is bizarre, but I knew there was something else coming. Like, probably the same. You think, well, there's got to be some little final, not twist, but just like a little extra bit at the end.
Right.
And so there kind of is, really, because Liam is kind of off the hook in a way, but he's not really, because the British politicians, government know that they know the young woman that he's been having an affair with, because they've used that as kind of leverage on him, was the woman that they killed in the apartment, the one who was involved. So actually, he's theirs now, as far as they're concerned. He'd do whatever they need, because they have got a way of revealing he was part of this plot. But then Kwan finds Liam and then puts a picture of him and the mistress online anyway.
No, what he says, "You send it."
That's right. No, you're right.
He's worked it out as well, because Kwan has then seen the picture and he knows the girl because he saw her in the apartment. So all the way through, he's been saying, "I'm not involved. They're nothing to do with me." We found out, but Kwan hasn't until this point where he sees the picture of the girl, and when he saw her in the apartment, he then realised it was the same one. And then he says, "You send it," and he says, "Now everybody will know who you really are and what you've done." So he makes him do it himself.
Sure. Yeah, that's right.
Which was quite interesting.
Which means he can walk away kind of uninvolved in a way. He just goes back to his restaurant.
Yeah, but the police are watching him, and they see him turn up, and then they say, "Oh, he's back in his apartment. What do we do?" And the captain says, "I think we'll just leave him alone. I think we owe him. It's something like we owe him a debt or something."
Yeah.
Which was quite interesting. I thought they were gonna, I don't know, arrest him or do something with him, but they didn't. They just left him alone. So, and he goes back to his quiet life again.
Yeah.
As in the restaurant, and that's kind of it, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different. It really is a very different film to what I was expecting.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
The way it's marketed, the way it's been sold, the way it's kind of pitched as a Taken / film, meaty type thing.
Yeah, and because there are so many of those kind of films now, particularly with older action stars or older actors,
absolutely,
it kind of feels, it's another one of those. But I'm kind of pleased it wasn't, in a way, because it's probably, if you took Jackie Chan out of this and it was just a film about the intrigue and stuff, it's probably not the kind of film I would necessarily watch these days.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know, like the elements combined in this were quite unique. And again, so they say it felt a bit like films from back in the day.
Back in the day, yes. It was good. It was very, very good. I'm just looking at some of the photos from the press tour in China, and it's very kind of Pierce Brosnan and Jackie Chan's character head to head on all the kind of posters and all the PR, and on even the microphones have pictures with those two on head to head and stuff, which is hilarious. And it is those two going against each other, of course, but that's not how it's kind of been pitched over here, which was interesting. But and Martin Campbell. Yes. I don't know. I wonder how well it did at the box office. I'm going to have to look it up.
I don't know what. I don't know. I'm not sure, because it was picked up by Netflix for the UK. So I don't know. I'm assuming it had a Chinese release, but I think everywhere else it might have gone straight to Netflix because they picked up the distribution.
So the budget was 35 million. In America, it made 34 million, and foreign 110. So worldwide, it's made 145 million. So that's, when they say you have to double it to make any money. So it's done that and more. So it's in terms of money for the film companies, everybody else, it's a success because it's just made nearly 150 million around the world.
Yeah, and obviously Netflix would have either put money in or put money for distribution rights to because it was pretty much simultaneously on there, and I think marketed as a Netflix original because in the UK it didn't have a cinema release; it just was on Netflix. So yeah, there's obviously it's an interesting. I don't know. I kind of wish Jackie Chan had made this kind of film maybe 20 years earlier, so it could have been somewhere between kind of his Hong Kong stuff and rather than maybe so many action comedies. But anyway, I guess I'm about to start talking in the realm of scores, so I should hold back.
No, let's go with it. Let's do some scores.
Enough with the yag. What is your score?
So you made a start, so carry on.
Yeah, so I guess I was expecting, like we said, The Taken, Equalizer, maybe even a John Wick kind of film. I mean, John Wick is like super hyped, particularly the second one. And it's not that. It's much grittier. It's a thriller. It's an action thriller with like a small A in a way.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan definitely has less screen time than Pierce Brosnan, I think.
Yes.
Which I'm in two minds about, really. The fights that are in there are really strong. A couple more would have helped, but having said that, I don't think it would have been realistic to the story. He only really fought people when they came after him and only did what he needed to do in the situations he needed to. But as we've talked about on the way through, really, Jackie Chan's story or Kwan's story is kind of the B story in a way, which is kind of hard to get your head around. I think Jackie Chan's great in it. I think Pierce Brosnan's great in it. But I guess the kind of lack of action overall and the kind of the pacing means that I think 3 bags is where I'm going to hang my hat.
hang your hat indeed.
Hang my hat. Hat is fine.
Okay. Yeah, it was not the film that I was expecting. It was pitched as and marketed in the UK at least as a very action-orientated revenge film, and yet it wasn't really. He was intent on revenge, but it was more of a political story with an action bit added on almost, even though we know it's based on a book, and so I'm sure that was probably quite a political thing as well. So I don't know, I suspect this film, for a change, was closer to the book in terms of, in the hands of a different director or a different writer, it would have become that over-the-top super, he's killed 50 guys in the first 30 minutes and he guns down another 70 before he finally gets revenge, like a Taken type thing. Yeah. But they kept it at a higher level in terms of, we're going to keep it as political drama. We're keeping all that political stuff in. We're not going too far over on the action, and we're making the action hero age appropriate for someone who's in his 60s. But the angle on terrorism was very close to home because of bombings and stuff in London and exploding bus we had, on 7/7, all this kind of stuff. So it was a bit close to the knuckle for me at times, obviously with us both being in the UK.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to give it 3 bags as well, because although I enjoyed it and it wasn't the film that I was expecting, that's nothing to do with, that's my own fault. I'm not taking any bags off for that. I think I wasn't expecting this kind of a film, and so that my mood was a bit different. I did enjoy it, but it was just not what I anticipated. It's hard.
I know what you mean. There were times I was thinking, is it edging towards a 4? Just because it's a very well-made thriller, but there was something that just quite, held it back for me. And we don't do half scores.
No half bags.
No half bags at all.
No half bags at all.
No,
not allowed.
No.
So yeah, have you seen The Foreigner? If not, have a look at it on Netflix and let us know. It's a very different kind of film. You have to be in a certain mood, I think, to watch it.
I think if you've just listened to what we've said, though, you probably don't need to see it. But yeah, no, see what you think. See what you think of it. Definitely.
Yeah. It's worth your time, I think. And Pete, can you remember how you closed the show?
No, I can't. I genuinely can't.
Thank you for listening, if indeed.
If indeed you still are. Good night.
Good night.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.